I didn't pay my stepfather's hospital bills because I felt obligated. I paid them because he was the only person who ever treated me like I mattered. When he married my mother 10 years ago, I was 15 and already knew what it felt like to be unwanted. My mom was distant, wrapped in her own cycles of numbness and rage, and my stepsister Leah Jess, a year older, made the perfect mirror of her. Together, they created a tight circle of whispered judgment and passive cruelty that I was always just outside of. But Mark, my stepfather, never joined them. He was patient, gentle, and somehow managed to make me feel like the house wasn't shrinking around me. He attended my school art shows when no one else could be bothered. He learned the names of my favorite writers. He made dinner for me when my mother forgot. And when I left home at 18 for a small college 3 states away, he hugged me and said, "You deserve good things, kiddo. Don't ever doubt that." I never forgot. Years later, after I graduated and started working as a graphic designer, I got the call from him. His voice sounded thin, like it had been worn down by days of pain. "Hey kiddo, I didn't want to worry you, but the doctors want to run more tests." Tests became scans, scans became surgery, and the surgery came with a stack of bills so steep it made my throat close. My mother refused to help, blaming him for being irresponsible with his body. Leah rolled her eyes and said she wasn't made of money, so I stepped in. I paid the bills quietly, using the savings I'd scraped together over years of ramen dinners and freelance work. Mark didn't want me to, but he also didn't argue. He was too tired to warn. I told him it was nothing. I told him he could pay me back someday. We both knew he wouldn't, but I didn't do it for recognition, which is why I decided to keep it secret even from him. I paid the hospital directly, so no paper trails led back to me. I didn't want him to feel guilty or beholden. I just wanted him to receive the care he deserved. And for a few weeks, everything felt almost peaceful. Then came the family gathering. Mom wanted to celebrate Mark's successful surgery. She said it like she'd had anything to do with it. We gathered in the living room, where Mark sat in his recliner, pale but smiling. Leah came sweeping in late, wearing a silk blouse and smug confidence. She walked straight up to him, kissed his cheek, and announced loudly, "I'm just glad I was able to help when you needed it most. Covering your hospital bills was the least I could do." The world seemed to freeze. Mark stared at her. My mother gasped in performative amazement. Leah glowed under their praise. "That was so generous, sweetheart," Mom gushed. I felt something inside me twist, tight and sharp. I waited for the truth to surface, for Leah to crack a grin and say it was a joke, for my mother to ask how a part-time makeup influencer assistant could afford tens of thousands of dollars in medical debt. None of that happened. Leah simply basked in the admiration that wasn't hers. Mark, bless him, looked confused at first. Then his eyes flicked to me, uncertain. I smiled, small and tight, so he wouldn't question it. I left the house soon after, my heart burning. I had never wanted recognition, only honesty. But now they had rewritten the narrative completely, and in doing so, they erased me. That was the moment something inside me clicked into place. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth, and I would make sure it came out clearly, and in a way none of them could twist. I just needed a plan. 2 days after the lie, I sat alone in my apartment, turning Leah's betrayal over and over like a sharp stone in my hand. It wasn't just that she claimed credit, it was how effortlessly she slipped into the role of savior, how easily they believed her, how quickly I disappeared from the story. I wasn't going to confront her outright. I knew Leah's strategy too well: deny, deflect, and play victim until the other person looked insane. No, if I wanted the truth to come out, I needed precision, and to my surprise, it came more easily than expected. 1 week later, Mark called me. His voice was low, hesitant. "Can we talk, kiddo?" I went to visit him the next evening. He was alone when I arrived. Mom had gone to a spa day or so, she said, and Leah was busy, which usually meant something cosmetic or social. Mark sat in his recliner, looking smaller than I remembered. When he saw me, his face softened in a way that made my throat tighten. Did you pay the bills?" he asked quietly. I froze. "Why do you ask?" He rubbed his forehead. "Because Leah brought me a bunch of printed invoices to prove she did it. Only they weren't the real ones. They were summaries, not the originals. And I know she doesn't have that kind of money." I couldn't help it. I laughed. The sound part bitterness, part relief. "No, she doesn't." "So it was you." I hesitated. I had wanted to keep it a secret, truly, but this wasn't about me anymore. This was about letting him know the truth in a private, gentle way. Yes, I said softly, I paid them. Mark's eyes went glassy. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you to worry or feel guilty. He exhaled shakily. I don't feel guilty. I feel grateful and angry that she lied. That part, I felt too, but Mark wasn't a confrontational man. What he wanted more than anything was peace. So I knew he wouldn't say anything, which meant I would have to. But not with anger, not with screaming or accusations, with facts, and timing. That night, I went home and pulled up every email confirmation, every PDF receipt, every date-stamped bank record. I organized them into a neat folder, digital and printed. I wasn't going to expose her out of spite. I was going to expose her because she needed the truth to be known, and because Mark deserved to know which of his family truly stood by him. But I needed an opportunity, and it arrived in the most predictable way possible. Mom decided to throw a thank you dinner in Leah's honor. I stared at the text message. Announcement. She called it a celebration of generosity. Perfect. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. Mom's dinner parties were always the same, performative, pretentious, and full of things no one actually liked, but she insisted were cultured. I arrived on time, a folder neatly tucked inside my bag. Leah was already there, dressed in a white jumpsuit that made her look like a saint in the world's most obvious metaphor. She greeted me with an exaggeratedly sweet smile. Oh, you came? How nice. Wouldn't miss it, I replied. But Mark sat quietly at the table, uncomfortably aware of the lie surrounding him like suffocating fog. He met my eyes, and I gave him a small nod. Dinner began with Mom tapping her glass. I want to acknowledge Leah, she said, eyes shining with theatrical tears. Her sacrifice saved this family. Leah lowered her gaze as if she were embarrassed. It was almost impressive, the way she performed humility while basking in false glory. Mom gestured for her to stand. Leah rose, clasping her hands. I just knew I had to step up. Family means everything to me. I almost snorted that, she continued, and I wanted to show what true love looks like. My jaw tightened. She had no idea what love looked like. She only knew applause. When everyone finished clapping, Mom said, Leah dear, why don't you share how you managed it? My stepsister froze. She wasn't expecting questions, especially not that one. Well, you know, she said, waving a hand. I have connections, and it must have been difficult handling the payment process, I said lightly. Medical billing is a nightmare. Leah's eyes shot to mine. Oh, it was fine, she stammered. I just went through the website. Which website? I asked. The usual one. There are 3, I said. Which one did you use? Everyone was looking at her now. She swallowed. The hospital one? Right, I said, smiling. So you must have seen the line items for the CT scans and the anesthesia fees. Her face drained of color. Mom frowned. Leah, what is she talking about? This was my moment. I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. Since we're celebrating generosity, I thought we should be precise. I opened it and rotated the documents so they faced the room. These are the paid invoices from my bank account. Time-stamped, confirmed, and verified. Silence. Leah stared at the papers like they were burning her. Mom blinked. But, Leah said, I know what Leah said, I replied calmly. But these are the facts. Mark looked at me with something like pride and sadness. She's telling the truth, he said. I suspected it. I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't want this to be a scene. But she's the one who paid. The room felt suspended in glass. Mom's single quotes is face twisted. Leah opened her mouth, but all that came out was a croak. I didn't think that much is obvious, I said gently. I wasn't angry. Not anymore, just done. Mom sank into her seat, humiliated. Leah burst into tears, but not the kind that meant anything. These were the tears of someone caught, not someone repentant. But I didn't gloat. I just gathered my folder and said, the only reason I revealed this is because integrity matters, especially when it comes to people we claim to love. Mark looked at me like I had restored something inside him. I had no idea the real consequences of that night hadn't even begun yet, not until the next morning. The morning after the dinner, my phone buzzed. I ignored every call except one. Mark's. He sounded lighter than he had in months. Thank you, he said simply, for everything, and for not making it cruel. I didn't want revenge, I reminded him, just truth. I know, he said, and that's why it mattered. He told me he'd be staying with a friend for a while. Mom, had screamed at him for humiliating Leah by confirming my story. Mark told her calmly that he wouldn't stay in a house where lies were cherished more than love. That hit me harder than I expected. My mother had always chosen Leah. Always. Even when Leah was cruel. Even when I had tried so hard. Apparently, adulthood didn't change much. A few days later, Leah reached out. The text read, "You ruined my life. Hope you're happy." I didn't reply. I didn't even feel triumph. Just a quiet, heavy sadness, the kind that comes when a chapter is ending, but you don't know what the next one looks like. 2 weeks passed. That's when the real fallout reached me. Mark had filed for divorce. Not because of the dinner, not because of the fight, but because he found out something worse. My mother had refused to help him, not out of financial strain, but because she didn't want to jeopardize her savings on someone who might not survive. It shattered him. He told me later, "I thought she loved me, or something close to it, but she loved convenience." During the separation process, something unexpected happened. Mark asked if I would be comfortable being listed as his secondary emergency contact, since he was untethered now. I said yes, of course. And then he said something that stayed with me. "You were the only real family in that house." I didn't cry until I got home. Meanwhile, Leah began spiraling publicly, posting cryptic Instagram stories about betrayal, making vague references to toxic people who can't stand seeing others shine. But the local community wasn't blind. They'd heard whispers about the dinner, and people weren't impressed by her victim routine. I watched from the sidelines, not rejoicing, not pitying, just observing the consequences of her choices. Then, one afternoon, I got a knock on my door. That was Leah. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked smaller somehow, but not in a way that inspired sympathy. "We need to talk," she whispered. I stepped aside, letting her in. She sat on my couch, twisting her hands. "Mom's blaming me for everything," she said. "Mark left. People keep asking questions. And I can't even get sponsorships anymore. My reputation is ruined." I leaned against the counter. "Leah, you did that to yourself." She looked up sharply. "You exposed me." "You lied," I corrected. "I simply told the truth." She burst into tears again. "Fine, but could you at least talk to people? Tell them I'm not a bad person." I stared at her. She was asking me to lie. To clean up the mess she created by stealing credit for something I sacrificed years building the stability to afford. "No," I said quietly, "I won't lie for you." Her face hardened. "Then I hope you're satisfied." "It's not satisfaction," I replied. "It's responsibility." She stormed out, slamming the door. I exhaled, long and steady. This wasn't revenge, this was accountability. But I had no idea things were about to shift again this time. Not for Leah, not for my mother, but for me. A month passed. Mark was finalizing the divorce. My mother had stopped contacting me entirely, except for one message telling me I had destroyed the family. I didn't answer. In the quiet that followed, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. I wasn't carrying the weight of their dysfunction anymore, and without realizing it, I had stepped out of a role I'd been trapped in since childhood, the quiet, invisible one. Mark and I spoke regularly. He updated me on his recovery, and I helped him find a new apartment close to the park he loved. He joked that he felt like he was starting over, but with the right people this time. One evening, while helping him put together some furniture, he said, "I want you to know something. I'm changing my will." I nearly dropped the screwdriver. "Mark, not because you paid the bills," he said, cutting me off. "Because you're the one who showed up, the only one who acted out of love. You deserve something for all you've given." My chest tightened. "You don't have to, I know," he said gently, "but you're family to me." It wasn't the inheritance that mattered. It was hearing the word family said without conditions. While my relationship with my mother and Leah fractured, my relationship with Mark strengthened, healed, and grew in a way I never thought possible. Leah, meanwhile, was publicly unraveling. She posted a long, rambling apology video that didn't mention my name but clearly referenced the situation, claiming she had been pressured or misunderstood. The comments didn't buy it. My mother, stubborn to the end, refused to accept the truth. She told relatives that I set Leah up, which made them roll their eyes. No one believed her. Everyone knew her pattern of favoritism too well. I thought that was the end of it. Then Leah showed up again. This time, she wasn't angry, she was exhausted. "I don't want to fight anymore," she said, standing on my doorstep. "I want to say sorry." "I didn't say anything," she continued. "I didn't think you would expose me. I thought you'd just stay quiet." Like always, her words landed heavily. because she was right. That had been my role for years. Quiet, compliant, invisible, but not anymore. She wiped her face, and I didn't think Mark would leave. I didn't want that. I believed her. But belief wasn't the same as forgiveness. I'm not asking you to fix things for me, she said. I want to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken credit. I shouldn't have lied. For the first time, she looked honest, broken, yes, but honest. I nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that, she swallowed. Can we be okay? I thought about everything, about the years of cruelty, about the dinner, about the consequences she now faced. No, I said softly, not right now. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I understand. She walked away, shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilt, only clarity. Some relationships are meant to end so you can finally grow. Months passed. Mark recovered fully. His new place blossomed with plants and sunlight. We met every Sunday for lunch. He told me about the things he was rediscovering in life, books he loved, music he had forgotten, recipes he wanted to try. He looked healthier than I'd seen him in years. As for me, I started therapy, not because of the drama, but because I finally had the space to confront the years I'd spent shrinking myself. For the first time, I was learning to take up space, emotionally, mentally, physically. My job flourished. I moved into a bigger apartment. I even adopted a cat, something my mother would have called impractical. I named him Biscuit because he was warm and soft and not at all complicated. One afternoon, I received a letter. It was from my mother. I almost didn't open it. Inside was a short note. I'm sorry, I was wrong. But it wasn't enough. Not after decades. Not after everything. But maybe one day I'll answer. But healing doesn't mean returning to the people who hurt you. As for Leah, she eventually rebuilt her social presence, but not to the level she once had. She learned some humility enough to stop seeking applause for things she didn't do. Our paths diverged, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. And me, my revenge was never about punishment. It was about truth. It was about reclaiming my voice after years of being silenced, about standing tall when others expected me to shrink, about choosing integrity over approval. And in the end, the real victory wasn't that Leah faced consequences. It was that I finally stepped into the life I deserved, one built on honesty, love, and the people who chose me back. So when people ask what happened with my family, I simply say, I told the truth, and everything that fell apart after that was never meant to stay standing. That is justified revenge.